it's Brandon. I hope I would be able to reach you, but I guess I'm not able to. So I know this is going to come as kind of a surprise, at least to you. It isn't to me. But I killed someone today. I killed my girlfriend. Well, she's supposed to be my girlfriend, but she's without me.
Hi my lovelies, welcome back, thanks for joining me. Also apologies if I sound a little bit congested. It appears that some kind of cold tried to wipe out my entire family this week, and only now am I able to string a sentence together. I'm not looking for sympathy, but you can send antibiotics if you fancy, because you can't get them anymore, because getting a doctor's appointment is about as complicated as a PhD. Anyway, with all that in mind, we're going to talk about a case today which is really current as far as I'm concerned, because there's a lot of talk online about misogyny in our communities. By the way, guys, before you just switch off immediately and I'm like, I'm not going to listen to a channel that talks about misogyny, I like women. I get it. Most men like women. Most men are good. Goes without saying. I'm surrounded by good men in my own life. But that doesn't mean that we don't have to talk about some of the more challenging issues that we are facing as a society today. And of course, how that can then filter down into the types of crimes that I'm going to talk about today. If you're new to my channel, I release my content here twice weekly. I always will do forever. Amen. Also, I have my other full-length videos on Patreon and YouTube community. You guys are the reason that I can make so much content. So thank you so much for all the support there. I hope you're liking your new full-length videos. Also, podcasts are coming too, and you will note that we are trying to up and up and up the content that we create, because the guys who have helped me so much behind those paywalls are the reason that I can present this particular content here right now. So a massive thank you to all of you. I am wearing my favourite armchair detective top. You can grab one of these in my merch. You can see the description below that links you to it. I have a ton of new merch coming out as well. And if you do want to catch me on tour this year on my Killer Couples tour, which is just going so amazingly because you guys are so supportive, you can catch me at most big theatres in the UK in the next 12 to 18 months. With that in mind, let's talk about the case of Bianca Devins, this gorgeous young woman. She was 17, just 17 years of age, when her life was essentially brutally stolen by somebody that she thought was a friend. How often do we cover these cases where the very people in our intimate circle are the individuals who are capable of such monstrous actions? The thing about trust is we give it so easily, and that's what makes us amazing. Human beings are not foolish. Human beings are not stupid. When we are meeting people and we are connecting with people and we are sharing space with people, automatically we have this desire to trust them. And until they do something that makes us question that, and very often even when that happens, we'll forgive because we're forgiving in nature as well, often it means that we are not seeing the big red flags until it's too late. Because for the most part, we can trust people. And so it's such a dichotomy when we're saying, well, we have to have a level of suspicion about individuals. And yet if we did that with everyone, it'd be almost impossible to survive our lives. So when it is somebody that you trust, you have that bias and myth of security. But so often on this channel, we talk about how it fails time and time again. Murder is horrific. It's always horrific. There is no positives to murder. But what happened in the aftermath of Bianca's death, for me personally, when I've researched this case, it's just added a whole other layer of cruelty that no family should ever have to endure. The thing about today is we're living in this digital world. It's why I can connect with you regularly. It's why I can sit in my own front room and do these cases. It's because we have this technology and it is amazing. It's a democratic platform for anybody to use, but there's also dangers associated with it. And we do talk about the dangers of social media often, but for Bianca's loved ones, I would say aside from that initial origin of absolute trauma, pain, loss, their horror continues long after she's gone. Because not only are they having to deal with the unbearable processing of grief, losing her in this most horrendous and violent way, but then they're thrust into what can only be described as a nightmare that was never ending, because instead of being allowed to grieve in peace, the very thing that we should all be given the option to do, instead, this family, in the depths of loss, they become the targets of some of the worst online trolling I have ever heard of, and it's unimaginable. These faceless individuals hiding behind screens, just forcing themselves upon Bianca's family, literally sharing images of a murder, sending messages to them, forcing them to relive that trauma over and over again. And before people sit there and think to themselves, well, this is just faceless keyboard warriors, they aren't realizing the impact, I disagree, because a lot of research that we talk about in this field shows that individuals who are persistent trolls in such aggressive formats are individuals who have the dark triad of traits. That's psychopathy, it's Machiavellianism, and it is narcissism. Now, I think we can add sadism to that as well. So these are not just simple faceless individuals not realizing the impact. These are individuals absolutely realizing the impact and relishing the impact. So with that said, who was Bianca Devins? She was born on October the 2nd, 2001. She's literally a year older than my eldest son. She's a kid. She lived a whole life, and her very short life with respect, in Utica, New York. And she lived there with her mum. She lived with her younger sister, Olivia. And she is one of those girls that just has something about her. I'm sure that when you look at the pictures of this beautiful young woman, you can just see there's something creative, there's something artistic about her. And indeed, she was an incredibly talented artist. She was actually just about to start Mohawk Valley Community College that autumn. She was going to study psychology, so clearly she isn't just somebody who's creative and artistic, she's also academic. And she's obviously thinking about her future, which is clearly going to be a vast one with all these capabilities. Now, she had actually very sadly been a victim of revenge porn at the age of 15, which is horrifying. I mean, when you think about being a 15-year-old girl, and it's the same for boys, but obviously as I've only ever been a girl, it's really difficult for me to pretend that I understand how that would be for a male, because I think it's a different experience for a male. It is as humiliating, but there are different levels to it. But as a 15-year-old girl, you're so self-conscious, you're so concerned about your body, you're so worried about people's opinions. And the idea that you trust somebody with an explicit photograph of yourself, which is highly common. Yes, we know we shouldn't do it. Yes, it's not the best idea, but yes, it happens all the time. And you believe the person that you are sending that picture to is going to actually give you the grace of trust. And then of course you find yourself in a situation where they have publicised your body in the most unbelievable public domains. That is terrifying for anybody. So she'd gone through this horrible experience. Also, she did have some mental health struggles. So she was diagnosed with BPD, that's borderline personality disorder. Some people refer to that more with EUPD these days. But I just want to make it clear that when we talk about BPD, I have had the best clients in my life with BPD. A lot of therapists, a lot of individuals in the psychological world find it a struggle at times to work with borderline personality disorder. Personally, for me, some of the most spontaneous, giving, empathic, caring human beings suffer with BPD. Yes, they are a little bit more on the spontaneous side in some of their decision making. Yes, they can get very low very quickly. Yes, they have these extremes in feelings, and usually it's linked to trauma with respect. So it comes from bad experiences in the past, but actually, what makes them the human being that they are is the sum of their whole, not their parts. So BPD is a part, an element of who they are. It is not their entire nature, but it will mean that she goes through, shall we say, a lack of regulation sometimes where her emotional vocabulary is concerned. She also dealt with depression and PTSD. Now, the fact that she had post-traumatic stress disorder, that in itself demonstrates the connection potentially between the BPD and how it's activated by trauma. If you go through periods of time where you don't feel safe in your world and you can't regulate your sense of foundation, then you don't know how to formulate your emotions in an appropriate manner because no one's teaching, educating you, giving you those options. And so sometimes they can feel a little bit of out kilter, but that doesn't mean it's a lifelong issue. You can manifest change over these things. She's very young, and the likelihood is if she had had time, opportunity, freedom to move through some of these issues, she could have been in a far better mental state 5 years down the lane. And I think it's really sad that these things are ill-afforded these individuals because of what happens to them. Now, in fact, she had actually been in and out of hospital. She'd been receiving some help for this, so clearly she's got a supportive family who want to make sure that she gets the best. And it also means that she is confronting these issues and challenges head on. And that's one of the reasons why she gets motivated to do psychology. She decides, I want to do something purposeful with my life. I want to help people. And let me tell you, I was in the psychological system as a teenager for a good few years. And the reason I trained in this field was because I thought I can do a better job than those people trying to help me. And it was never something I regretted. It's interesting how your own personal experiences can trigger change for you in a really positive and purposeful way. And that's certainly what she was doing with her life. She can now imagine a future for herself. Now, obviously, when you're dealing with all those mental health issues, particularly depression, you need to think about things that are going to help you move through to healing. And she realizes that, to be honest, being online, in online communities where she felt a level of great acceptance really helped alleviate some of her pain. And she actually is known as an e-girl. Now, an e-girl is a term basically used for attractive online and gaming girls, and she is very attractive. You can imagine that in a very male-dominated area of that regime, she is somebody who's going to stand out because she's very pretty. And unfortunately, with the good comes the bad. So she'd actually been harassed online in that role by incels for at least 2 years. And we'll talk a little bit about incels down the line. But before we do, let's talk about Brandon Clark. So Brandon Clark was born on the 6th of October 1997. He grew up in Cicero with a brother. He would have quite a dysfunctional life when you look at his history because of the fact that his father was in prison for attacking his mother. So he's also grown up as a witness to violence. And for the most part, psychologically, if you grew up in an environment where you're exposed to violence, you're either witness to it or you yourselves are domestically abused, what will tend to happen is you'll become hypersensitive. Often it creates some vulnerabilities within you, so you might be more likely to be a victim down the line. You'll be very compassionate and it will be abhorrent to you to raise a hand to anyone. That's the majority. But let's just say you have traits within you and traits within your temperament, maybe even a predisposition for harm born into your DNA, and then you are witnessing these things, as opposed to it making you feel horrified or upset. What it will do will reduce empathy, and it will also potentially increase narcissistic traits. So you will normalize the experience, and by normalizing it, it will permission base it, and it will mean that down the line, you will go on to act in these potentially abhorrent ways yourself. Also, he very much aligned himself with the whole idea about being in the incel community. And we know this because after Bianca is murdered, he very much promotes that particular alignment. So he's very proud of the fact that he sees himself as part of that wider group. Now, incels are terrifying to some degree because they have been connected like any cult connects online these days. Because bear in mind, back in the day, if you wanted to join a cult, first of all, you wouldn't go and join a cult, would you? You'd go and join a community group or a religious movement, or you'd hang out with a group of people that seemed real cool. And it would only be like 6 months down the line where you'd be like, oh, this is a bit weird. Doesn't feel like what I signed up for, right? What's changed about cults now is that they can reach you anywhere. If you've got a smartphone, if you've got technology that allows the internet to transport itself through it, they can get to you. So we have these communities that ordinarily might never have grown, with some of the most ludicrous mission statements, essentially. But they are connecting with lonely individuals, with damaged individuals, and it's just blowing up. And the reality is that where incels are concerned, the internet has shown how it can transform disconnection into destruction. So in these spaces, individuals who are grappling with personal rejection, social alienation, they might be looking for understanding, they might be looking for guidance, they might be looking for validation, even though all of that would involve having dangerous thoughts confirmed, it's now available. Because what happens in the incel community, and what we're talking about with incels, is involuntarily celibate. So they don't want to be celibate, they want to have sex, but they're not able to have sex because there's a whole heap of issues around them that means that women are not attracted to them, or women are a bit wary of them. But instead of them being able to internalize that and say, what do I need to change? They project blame onto these women, and they see entitlement in their mindset, which is, I should be able to have sex, they should want to have sex with me. And that's very dangerous. And this incel community, and like I said, it's very cult-like, they basically reinforce this idea that you're not flawed. You're not flawed. You just wanting to have sex with women that don't want to have sex with you, that's totally normal. It's not a little bit weird and creepy that you feel you have a right to somebody else's body who's not interested in you. No. That's not your fault. That's their fault. Even bigger than that, that is actually the world's fault. The world has been engineered against you. And so this is like an echo chamber of grievance. It breeds anger, breeds radicalization, and of course that then leads on to real world violence. Now, please let me tell you, it will always be personal responsibility where these kind of actions are concerned. I do not buy into this belief system that somebody is a sheep who can just be led in the direction of gross violence without the predisposition within them and nature to actually go ahead and do it. But what I'm saying is, if you are looking for a community who can drive forward your anger, your rage, your aggression, and give you a permission base to act it out, certainly these environments are bad for you. Now, Bianca and Brandon end up connecting. They connect on Instagram in April 2019. He was actually considered an orbiter. Now, an orbiter is basically a term for men who follow and idolise young women online. So there are a ton of them. And let's also be clear, most orbiters are harmless individuals who find somebody attractive or interesting and just want to know about their lives. And that's what social media is about. So we're not being negative about those orbiters, but of course, if an orbiter has a particular malevolent intent, fixation, or stalking behaviour, it's obviously very problematic. Now, the police, they described their relationship as intimate, which would suggest some kind of physical connection. But family and friends say that's not true. And with respect, family and friends know her better than the police know her. So I would always come down on the side of listening to those closest to her, particularly friends, because we might not tell our mother that we're having sex with somebody, but we certainly tend to tell our friends. And they deny that that was going on. And her mother actually said, absolutely not. Brandon had been told by her she didn't want to date him. Also, another close friend said, one of the things that did worry about me was that even though it said they weren't in some kind of sexual relationship, I felt that maybe there was some kind of exploitation there. So this friend of hers said he thought that he was giving her drugs and then he was sexually exploiting her while she was under the influence. Now, if that's the case, we all know that she can't consent. That's rape. It's as simple as that. I know that the nuances of rape has changed. I know that back in the day, people used to see this very black and white experience of rape. Usually you'd be walking down an alley, somebody would drag you off and violate you. Or after it became illegal for husbands to force themselves on wives, we understand that context. But more recently, we understand that you can't consent if you are inebriated. So if you are drunk or if you're under the influence of drugs and then somebody has sex with you, you're not in there, you're not there, you've not got the space to say yes or no. And realistically, if that has been happening, she might not even have been aware of what was playing out. Brandon Clark down the line also admitted that he was absolutely infatuated with her. And he actually said, after the murder we're going to talk about today, I was totally in love with her from the minute I saw her. He said he used to obsessively text her. He said that she had magnetism. Yes, Brandon Clark. She did have magnetism. She did have charisma. She was creative. She was beautiful. She was one of those rare gems in the world with that hint of vulnerability and fragility running through her, what makes her even more attractive because that makes her relatable. Why does that mean that you have any right to her? Just the language, the fact that he used to obsessively text her, that she had magnetism. Can you see how the psychology of that is playing into his belief that somehow he had no option? He had no option but to do what he's going to do to her because she was so profoundly beautiful and unusual and magnetic. This is how predators work. The more you can take the victim and make them to the problem, the more you can allay your responsibility and accountability. If she hadn't been magnetic, if she hadn't been beautiful, if she hadn't actually bothered being friends with me, then she would still be alive. It's ludicrous, but it is a time-told story again and again and again. Now, bear in mind, one of the things that we do know about Bianca and Clark is that she was at an age and a stage where she wasn't ready for a big relationship. She didn't want to be exclusive. I appreciate that for people of my age, because I'm 419 years old, my children ask me, what were the olden days like, Mum? As if I still have my horse and cart just roped outside my house. But the point is, when I was young, all those many decades ago, it was really simple. You asked somebody out or you got asked out and you were in a couple. Very, very easy. Now it went all Manhattan dating, didn't it? Where you can have like 4, 5, 6, 7 people and you're dating them, but you're not exclusive, right? That's the way the world is. I would personally find it utterly exhausting, but that's what young people are growing up with. You go through different stages, don't you? Oh, we've connected online. Oh, I'm talking to them now. Oh, I'm chatting to them now. Oh, I'm meeting them now. And then 7 years later, I'm dating them now. That's how it seems to be. So what she is doing there makes perfect sense. She doesn't want to be exclusive. She's young. She's gone through all these mental health issues. She's getting her life back on track. She's got some hope. And she's telling him, I just want to be friends. Now, bear in mind, he's not going to like that. But as we know, she is not going to be happy with that because he absolutely is infatuated with her. And again, before we move on, let's just talk about the spectrum of bad love versus good love. The idea that love cannot be bad is ludicrous, but we talk about this all the time as if there is only a feeling that is positive where love is concerned. No, bad love exists. It's still love. You can feel intoxicated, you can feel completely connected, you can feel totally embedded within this person, and yet it's toxic as hell. And it's bad for every party. It's where the bad boys, the con artists, the predators, the people who abuse you are, but it's love nonetheless. So he is in that space. And of course, she doesn't want to be in that space because she will know there is just something off about Clark. It's as simple as that. So her being brave to say, I just want to be friends, but also still seeing him. So she's not playing the it's not you, it's me card. She's saying, I just don't want to be exclusive. I still want to be friends with you. And she still hangs out with him. So she's good to her word. She's true to her word. Whereas I, back in the day, would have used it as an excuse. And I'm sure a lot of you watching right now, you'd have used that as the excuse to kind of break the relationship down. You'd have been like, it's me, it's not you. Let's be friends. And then maybe I'll see you in 5 years or never again. That's what a lot of people do, not her. She's true to her word. She did see him as a friend. She did trust him in that role. Also, her family trusted him in that role. And one of the things that she decided she wanted to do is she wanted to see one of her really favourite singers perform, a Canadian singer called Nicole de la Ganga. So she actually asks Brandon Clark to drive her to the concert in New York City on the 14th of July 2019. Now, bear in mind, that's a 250-mile trip. She wants to go and see her icon, and she's asked him to go with her. So essentially, she likes spending time and sharing space with this man. Now, I understand that from Brandon Clark's perspective, he could see that as being used. Bear in mind, if you've got this malevolence within you, if you've got this malice, if you're feeling angry because this person you want no longer wants you or doesn't want you, full stop, and now they're asking you for a lift, that can create this sense of resentment. Oh yeah, you want me for my petrol, you want me for my car. He's misreading it because there is nothing about Bianca that would suggest that she was a manipulator in that way, but we're working with the perspective of the individual perpetrator here. And for him, that would be very easy to mistake. Now, she also, I would say for her, makes a fatal mistake because she asks Brandon to buy another friend, Alex, a ticket. So she asked him to basically not just get her a ticket, but to get a friend of hers, Alex, a ticket to the concert. Now, bear this in mind. Brandon Clark is infatuated, I would say obsessed, and now she's bringing a male that he will immediately and automatically see as some kind of competition into this connection. And he is livid, absolutely livid. But he's obviously also curious. He's thinking to himself, well, I'm not going to pretend like I care, because he doesn't want to feel like demasculation, but he also wants to check out who is this guy, who is this competition, and he's absolutely incensed by it. So he does still drive her from Utica to New York City for the concert, and at this point they meet up with Alex, and of course Clark becomes insanely jealous. First of all, he just can't wrap it around his tiny little brain as to why Bianca might have invited him. Because Brandon Clark looks at Alex and thinks, you're not attractive. You're not the kind of guy who should be around this girl. As if we measure everybody by looks, as if Bianca is that shallow. He also, later down the line, described Alex as ordinary and overweight. Yes, Brandon Clark, Alex might have been ordinary overweight, but he's also a good person who isn't a horrible perpetrator of violence and maybe was a really nice person, which is something you wouldn't understand. But of course, if you imagine a cooking pot of possibility where jealousy is the main ingredient, this guy is simmering with it. And then, obviously, Brandon Clark is keeping an eye on Bianca and keeping an eye on Alex. And he sees them kiss and he sees them hold hands, and she has absolutely every right to do so. She's not with Brandon at all. He's not involved in her life apart from being a friend. She's been very explicit about that. She wants to kiss Alex. She wants to hold hands with Alex. She wants to go to a hotel with Alex. That is all allowed because she is an independent, autonomous human being with those rights. But he is seeing this as a slur of the highest order against him. And he isn't expressing his feeling. He's just keeping it in there. It's festering. Now, on the journey back, Bianca texts a friend about her encounter with Alex because it's what you do, isn't it? You have a bit of a kiss and a cuddle. Maybe you like a guy a little bit. You've had an exciting opportunity. Maybe you're texting your friend to say, I don't know why I kissed him. But the point is, it's totally contextual. She then falls asleep, and she falls asleep in the car of a man that she trusts, who's taken her to a gig, who she thinks she is safe with. It's just that she could not have been any farther from the truth in that assumption. On that drive home, Bianca's asleep. Brandon is literally seething, and he can't let it go. And as they get closer and closer and closer to her home, he knows that he just cannot let what has happened on that day go at all. He's building it up, the pictures in his brain, the psychological rejection, humiliation, feeling emasculated potentially because this woman has made a choice that doesn't involve him. So finally, he just stops. They're almost home at this point. He decides, I'm going to challenge her. She's literally 10 minutes from the safety, the serenity, the sanctuary of her own home. But before he challenges her, he sets up a camera on the dashboard of his car. So he's ready. Whatever's going to happen in this interaction, in this altercation, he's going to record it. Now, just put yourself in that position psychologically. What's going on there? Why? Because the thing is, if you have a screen there, suddenly there is a disassociation between reality. Psychologically, you're not quite as responsible. This is something you're filming. It's a step away from the actual engagement. And that's the danger of these kind of actions. That's the danger of so many of us living through screens. We don't take responsibility. We don't have accountability for what happens next. So now he's prepared. Now he's ready. Now he's going to make her pay because he's going to make this public. You don't film something like this unless you're going to use it for purposes. I appreciate some of us will say, well, you know what, if we're having an argument with somebody, we want to record it just so we've got it for posterity and so we can prove our point down the line. No, that's not why we record things. We record things because it gives us a sense of one-upmanship. We're the one in control. We're the one in power. And even if the person is aware of the recording, it shifts their state. It always does. And it's the same as when you falsely record somebody without their knowledge and you then perpetuate an escalation so that they look really bad. That happens all the time in family courts, for example. You do it because you are manipulating a situation. And without that person being fully on board, you are breaching a real big trust boundary. Now, bear in mind, she's been asleep, she's been at a concert, she's probably knackered, she's 10 minutes away from home, and then suddenly she's being brought round by Brandon Clark, who's angry. And just as I said before, now he's ranting at her that she used him. She says, I didn't use you, you know, we're just friends, we're not dating. She then sensibly and 100% rightly says, look, I'm leaving, I'm almost home, I'm not going to put up with this. At that point, and bear in mind, put yourself in the psychological position, the physical position, the emotional position, the social position of Bianca. This is a guy she trusts. This is a guy that she understands likes her. This is a guy that she's going to afford a sense of understanding and compassion in that moment because, hey, these things happen. People fall out because they're intimately interested in somebody and it's not happened for them. And she's probably just thinking to herself, I just need to give him some space. So that's what she's going to try to do, to leave the car. But that's not going to happen because why? He grabs a knife. And that was a knife that he had in his car. Now, I don't know about you. I know that in America, I often have to caveat this, guys, because I'm not an expert in America or American law. I understand stand your ground rules. I understand the fact that you have a constitution that says you can carry a gun. I get that. I also understand that if you work in certain careers, even in the UK, you can carry a particular type of knife. These are things that I appreciate, but this isn't what we're talking about here, is it? Why has he got a knife in his car? You know, I drive my car, my husband drives his car, my kids drive their cars. None of them are walking around after exiting their vehicle with a knife on them because they've not transported one. None of them are getting into the car, opening the glove box, and there is a knife in the glove box. It is not legal in the UK. It carries a very stern sentence. He has clearly brought this with him. And if he's brought this with him, think about the level of premeditation. I'm not saying that he absolutely believed when he got in that car, I'm going to kill her. But he wanted to know he could. Now this comes from nowhere. Suddenly she's being stabbed. She fights back because she's a warrior. But you just imagine it. You imagine a big guy with a knife violently attacking you. The knife itself is almost impossible to contain. We see that in defense wounds. You know, people have entire hands ripped to pieces. They're trying their best, but the knife is going to go through those hands and it's going to get into your body. Bianca literally doesn't stand a chance. And also, let's just be clear, she's in a small space. It's not as if she's managing to get out of the car and start running. Maybe there'd have been a hope there. But when you're in a small confined space and the guy has got a good reach, you are doomed. It's as simple as that. So now he's stabbing her and it goes further than that, guys. And it's graphic what I'm going to tell you, but I'm going to tell it you because Bianca died this way and she deserves for us to know that. She deserves for us to understand the true gravity of her pain and agony and what he did to her. He literally sawed through her throat. Just think about some of those videos that you will have seen clips of, by choice or not by choice. I know that a lot of people have seen these things, but when ISIS murdered the innocent journalists, for example, that they killed and that they put out on a big PR campaign, that's what they do. They saw. It's not a cutting off somebody's head. You know, it's not taking a guillotine or a large samurai sword and taking a big swing so it's an instant thing. No, this is about a repeated sawing action, and the person who is having that happen to them is alive during that experience in absolute agony. They are choking on their own blood and the horror is just so intense that it is incalculable to imagine. He manages to almost decapitate her. Now later, the ADA stated, it's not like on TV. He has to get through to the muscle. So basically, they're talking about the fact that this was a protracted attack. It takes time. And she doesn't die as he's doing that. She's still alive. He literally records her last breaths. And then he actually tells later down the line, the prosecutors, that the video was just for him because he wanted to watch it all over and over again. What does that tell you about his mindset? What does that tell you about the territorial dominance that he felt over Bianca? Bianca is this young girl. She has a whole life ahead of her. She's not committed to any man. She doesn't have to commit to any man. She's far too young to commit to any man. And yet here we have an individual so incensed that she will not give herself to him fully, that he feels that she has erred so greatly that she needs to be decapitated almost, and he needs to record her dying so that he can remind himself again and again of what she deserved. That's what he's doing. He believes she deserves it. That's justice. How dare she treat him like that? How dare she ask for a lift? How dare she kiss a guy? How dare she exist if not to exist for him? And that's his motivation. Now, although he didn't immediately post the video, he does go ahead and he posts pictures of Bianca's dead body on Discord. Now, if you don't know what Discord is, it's an online platform where people share texts and pictures and videos. Now, those pictures have since been shared all over the world by tons of different users. Do you know what's really, really horrific in this case? That's how Bianca's mother discovered her daughter had died. Now, at first, of course, you go for the hope that this is just some kind of horrible joke. It's a sick joke. This is just something that has been created with makeup. But this was actually real. The time that she finds her daughter dead is online, just posted, where anyone can see. Brandon Clark then left her body in the backseat of the car. He then builds a bonfire. He then stages a body on the tarpaulin, and he's actually playing the song Test Drive by the Japanese rapper and internet star Joji. Apparently the song is about a failing relationship. He then rings his grandmother, he tells her what he's done. He actually has to leave her a voicemail because he can't connect with her. He then tries to call his brother in Alaska. He does manage to call her aunts and mentor father figure that he had. They do the right thing straight away. They call the police. Online friends, they're also calling the police. They can't believe what's happening. In fact, the police receive a hell of a lot of calls because for the most part, people online do not see this in a titillating way. They see this as horror, as gore, as just the destruction of this beautiful child. Then, to add insult to injury, he posts a picture of Bianca's dead body to her channel with the caption, "Sorry, fuckers, you're going to have to find someone else to orbit." This is just after he has all but decapitated this girl. This is where his mind is. He's not in a situation where he's thinking to himself, I've just killed somebody. He's still in the resentment phase, the justification phase. She deserved it. And everyone else needs to know that she deserved it. That's his mindset. He then posted a picture to his Snapchat and the caption read, "Tomorrow is the day of retribution." Now, of course, when we think about retribution, it basically means revenge. It means that something big is coming. He also spray painted, "May you never forget me," on the ground. And apparently at this point, he intended to kill himself. But isn't it strange how these murderers, how these killers, how these predators, they're so adept at killing other people. They're really effective at it. We see it time and time again. But how often do they fail to do the very thing that they seem so good at when it comes down to other people, which is to take lives? Because even though he intends to kill himself, and let's be real, there is a ton of ways that he can do that. And I'm not suggesting that everybody who kills somebody should go out and kill themselves. I'm suggesting that if you actually have an intention to do that, if you're really honestly truthful about that, believe me, it can be achieved relatively easily. I come from that position as a daughter of suicide. My father, I literally cut down. So believe me, if somebody intends to kill themselves, it's something that you can do. And this is why I always believe that narcissistic integrity within them is so big that no matter what, they're not actually really intending to ever end themselves. They just want to do it to seem like more of a victim than they actually are. Now, he calls 911. He then tells them what he's done, tells them where he is. Well, of course, he can't get away with it because he's in his car. He's already called people that he knows and loves, or at least has a relationship with, and they're aware of what he's done. He's posted it online, so he's banged to rights. Nothing he can do about that. And apparently he just calmly states, "I'm not going to be on long because I need to do the suicide part of the murder-suicide." So again, that speaks of clear premeditation, the fact that he's formulated this idea with murder-suicide. That is not something he's just come up with, it's something he has decided on. Now, when the police arrive, because understandably they need to get there quickly, there is a person who suggested they've killed an individual and now they're thinking of threatening their own life. He just lies on top of the tub hole, and Bianca's under that tub hole in. He then cuts his throat and he takes a selfie. Yes, I did say that. Let's just pause. He gets the police there. He literally lies on top of the tarpaulin as the police are there. He then slits his own throat, but also takes a selfie. Because, I mean, I don't know about you. I mean, it seems like such a typical thing to do. Record everything in your life, even your death. I mean, it just speaks again of that narcissism, doesn't it? The fact that he's taking a picture of himself in that moment. Now, he ends up getting into a struggle with the police. He's then arrested. He then is obviously taken for emergency surgery. He's then charged with her murder a day later. But let's be clear, he hadn't seriously injured himself because this guy wasn't in a coma for a week. This guy didn't lose so much blood that he couldn't even be spoken to the police for months. No, and a day later, he's charged. He was totally deluded in his perspective. He said to the police, "I realised she was going to be the death of me," and that he wanted her to know that he died because of her. Again, could you be any more egocentric? She just didn't want to be with you. She just didn't want to go out with you. She's a young woman. But at the end of the day, it's her fault. Now, he said he'd initially planned to hang himself on the swing set that they used to meet at. Well, you could have done that, couldn't you, before you killed her? And he'd actually also got a tattoo of that swing set on his leg, which I suppose we could buy into a belief that that shows how connected he was to her, even though she would have been aware of his fascination and also what I would consider very stalker-based behaviour. Now, because Bianca died in such a public and harrowing and to some degree unusual way, Her death went viral. And then it begins. Incels target her family. They're just repeatedly sending death photos. That means that the family who are dealing with this absolute horror, this absolute shock, they're now having to suffer the death over and over and over again. Now, when he's challenged by the police about why he's posted these images, he said he lost it and he posted for no profound reason. Absolute BS. He had a reason. He made it clear that orbiters would have to find somebody else to be interested in. He did it because he wanted people to see as notorious. He did it to let the world know, listen, you ever slur me in any way and you too could end up this way. It's a power play of the highest level. He claimed that her orbiters, the people who were fascinated with her, were looking at her pictures, they were exploiting her, and that it was they who set the whole thing up in motion. So completely delusional belief, again, absolutely deflecting blame, projecting it elsewhere, and even victim blaming at the same point. In fact, he even goes so far as to claim that he had a psychological breakdown and that his brain was fried. Sweetheart, if murdering people was to do with your brain being fried, every middle-aged woman in the history of middle-aged women would be having a murder rap sheet as long as my arm. We always have brains fried at this point in our lives. We're knackered. We're paying out a lot of bills. We're bringing up our kids. We've got loads of responsibilities. We're exhausted. But you know what? We don't want to kill people. So your brain being fried isn't going to cut any kind of understanding as to your actions. Now, he said that he didn't share the pictures with many people. You only need to share them with one site. That's it. And then it's over. They'll be everywhere. He also said, look, it's other people sharing them. Yes, because you were the one who started it. So he then tries to say, listen, it's not my fault. I'm not responsible for the family's torment. Sorry, can we just go through that? So what are you saying? I'm saying I only uploaded a few to this massive World Wide Web, and I haven't specifically been sending those images to the family, so that's not my fault. Did you kill her? Yeah. Did you take photographs of her? Did you video it? Yeah. Did you then upload said images to the World Wide Web? Yeah. Okay, that's fine. If you could just walk straight to the bottom of that corridor, just to your left at the bottom. Sorry, that looks like there's a really big incinerator. No. You just carry on. In fact, I'm just going to put this blindfold on you. If you just carry on walking to the end of the corridor and then just take a left. Just go on. I've got the blindfold on. I'm feeling a bit hot. Just keep going to the left. Just see the heat as a reason to continue. It'll just guide you where you need to go. To the gates of hell. Sorry, bit of a fantasy there for me, but you know, it helps me survive these cases with these kind of not rights. So yeah, he's not responsible at all for the family's torment. It's everybody else's fault. Ironically, he also said that the continued sharing of her photos is completely disturbing. Take a breath, everybody. That's right. He can't believe it. What are these not rights? Sharing these pictures of this person that I murdered. What terrible human beings they are. I swear to God, that's literally what he was saying. In fact, he decided to assert that the internet on the whole played a role. He said, listen, I've seen more horrific things online than what I did to Bianca. I kid you not, that's a direct quote. So, sorry, you saw things on... Yeah, I could have done even worse, because I've seen worse. And at the end of the day, I didn't do as bad, which means I'm not quite as bad. Imagine what it would have been like if I'd actually done some of the things I've seen online. Again, if you could just get the blindfold back on and just return to whence you came. Honestly. Now, pictures of Bianca literally go viral the week that she's murdered. By Sunday evening, it's on Twitter. Twitter, such a mainstream app. People are sharing, people are commenting, and please, let's be clear. The vast majority of human beings who come across these are horrified. I don't want to be saying that people are enjoying this, that people are titillated by this, that there is a voyeurism that's really negative. It's not like that. When you see things like this on Twitter, it is horrifying, and I'm sure that the vast majority of individuals who see it said that. Now, Dr. James Densley, who's a professor in criminal justice, he said that this kind of public violence literally carries the risk of secondary trauma for viewers. So what we talk about with vicarious trauma and secondary trauma is you don't actually have to be there, you can just view it, and you can actually be really badly traumatized through screams. And of course, it also re-victimizes Bianca every single time somebody puts eyes on her murder. Her murder was also discussed on a website called 4chan. That's a barely moderated internet message board. Basically, you can post anything, and you can imagine the kind of horrors that get posted there. And also on the more extreme 8chan. This is where really extreme content can be found. Please don't look it up, guys. I know that you'll be curious, and not because you're bad people, but because you just think to yourself, no, surely these can't exist. They do. Just let me tell you the information and try not to look, because I don't want any of you getting post-trauma because of these experiences. I mean, it can be really, really devastating for your brain and for your emotions. But these particular sites, they've been linked to really deadly attacks. So the Christchurch mosque attack, for example, that's linked to that particular site. Now, Bianca and Brandon both used 4chan, and users on it literally celebrated another 4chan murder. And then they were just discussing her death really misogynistically, really offensively. They were also photoshopping the horrific images of Bianca into memes. Now, this is a really common practice on these kind of websites where young men in particular are radicalized. They're kind of a place where lost souls congregate. Now, when the police confirmed that the pictures were real, this is bizarre. The followers that she had snowballed, she'd originally had about 2,000 followers before her death. Then the week after her death, this had risen to almost 160,000. In fact, these pictures continue to be posted and shared today. And just to say again, I don't think that all those people who followed her at that moment in time did it because they were voyeuristic and macabre and malevolent. When you think about the Gabby Petito case, I've not covered that yet. I have done the research, but I've just been holding off to do that case. You would see that her Van Life channel, before it was removed, just blew up because people wanted to know about her and felt sorry for her and felt it was wrong. And there was almost like the desire to kind of give that kick to her numbers. So I don't think that people are just looking and joining and following because of the death pictures. I think it's also to do with the horror that this girl had gone through this. Now, the impact of this case has been obviously massively devastating. Stephen Cremando, who's a criminal psychologist, he said, it actually furthers the physical crime. What they're trying to say 2 years after is, you don't know when it's going to come, but you know it's going to happen again. So for the family, it's a form of psychological terrorism. Now, according to Cremando, the individuals who are most likely responsible for the attacks on Bianca's family belong to the incel community. Now, let's just talk about incels. So by the incels' own definition, by their definition they've given themselves, they're men, they're aged 21 years or older. They tend to have typically have gone 6 months or longer without any sort of sexual activity, not by their own volition. They want it, they're not getting it. Now, the community is characterised, if nothing else, by pathological envy of attractive men called chads. And chads are who basically, incels believe, have greater success because they're attractive. And women most coveted by the group are called Stacies. And Bianca was considered in this online community as a Stacy. So basically, these incels, they look at men who are attractive, self-motivated, successful, hot, I guess is the word that young people would use, and they feel angry that they're not like that. Instead of looking at themselves and thinking, the vast majority of us are pretty ordinary, because that's the truth, isn't it, guys? The vast majority of us wake up in the morning, look in the mirror and think, why is my duvet at 3 p.m. still imprinted on my face? Why would my family walk past me if I was not wearing eyeliner because I look so different? We get it. We're ordinary, right? We've got our foibles. My body beneath clothes is not a body I would ever wish to have in a bikini. I'm at peace with that. You're at peace with that. We have our foibles, we have our idiosyncrasies, and we have people who love us in spite of it. And we also have internal strengths and traits that we build. We can be fantastic at a series of tasks and jobs and thrive financially because of what we do. We can have a personality that's as big as the biggest empire, and people can love us for that. But if you don't see that about your internal worth, and instead you focus everything out on, well, if I'm not sexually attracted to that person, my life's ruined, understandably, you're going to get angry, and then you're going to want to project blame. So instead of taking responsibility and accountability, they refuse to, and that fuels the fire where they see other women as inconsiderate for not being willing to share their bodies with them. Like I said, it's grandiose entitlement. It definitely stems from misogyny. It's a problem with a minority of men, but the problem is there nonetheless. So essentially, it's a cooking pot of possibility of negatives where these kind of crimes are concerned. We get to the 10th of February 2020. At this point, Brendan Clark appears in Utica County Court. He does plead guilty to second-degree murder. Now, his sentencing was scheduled for April the 7th. That was actually delayed because of the horrific COVID-19 pandemic. And as I said, initially, Clark had agreed to plead guilty to second-degree murder because he allegedly wanted to put Bianca's family through the least suffering possible. Sorry, Brendan Clark, I think you'll find that's a little bit too late. But anyway, that's what apparently was the motivation. However, in spite of this apparent noble motivation, he then undermines this by saying that his attorney coerced him into pleading guilty and that he didn't adequately represent himself. I mean, you slaughtered a girl on video in your own car. I'm struggling to imagine how you think that it's your attorney's fault for suggesting you plead guilty, but hey, Brendan Clark doesn't live in our universe, does he? Now, on the 2nd of June, he actually filed a notice to withdraw his guilty plea. He claimed his lawyer had failed him, because obviously that's it. Yeah, your lawyer's failed you. It's not that you failed at life. It's not that you failed at being a decent human being. It's not that you failed at being human and are in fact a monster. No, it's all your lawyer's fault. You want to spend some time with Sarah Boone. That case will be coming up on this channel soon. So he wanted his crime to be reduced to manslaughter. Now, like I said, on a serious note, for you guys, it's laughable, and you know the law. You watch my channel a lot, and I'm sure you watch a lot of other channels as well, and we're all very adept at telling you the law. You'll all be aware that manslaughter is impossible in this case. It's as simple as that. You can't have manslaughter when you look at the fact this guy premeditated killing her, had the knife in the car, literally set the phone up, and then murdered her by hacking her head off. Can we be clear? He's never going to get to manslaughter, but if you are so delusional in your mindset, you're so convinced because of your narcissism and your entitlement that at the end of the day, she was the problem, she caused it, she put me in this position. I didn't have a choice but to act in this way because of her motives and her movements. That is where his mindset is. Now, under New York criminal law, a judge is not required to allow a defendant to change a guilty plea. And I'm sure that Judge Michael Dwyer, who was overseeing this case, was like, okay, yeah, no, that's not happening. So that's exactly what happened. He was like, denied, you admitted your guilt, we are going to try you with that guilt. Now, Judge Dwyer didn't want to put the jurors through the horror of the video footage and the graphic pictures either because of the traumatization level that would cause. Prosecutor Sarah D'Amelia, she emphasized the horror of the recording when she said, we saw her desperately fight for her life. And the overall feeling was that he simply wanted more time in the spotlight. That's why he changed his guilty plea. So he was like lapping up the fact that people were seeing him. He got a bit of notoriety because, again, he's egocentric, but no one cares about him because he's such a loser. So because of that, getting that spotlight on him, it means for a moment he's visible. And that's really alluring to this kind of individual. And let's also be very clear about just identifying what I'm saying to confirm my belief in his mindset. He'd already set up interviews with bloggers and he was planning on writing a memoir. What was the title? I'm an absolute bastard. That would be the title, wouldn't it? Probably wouldn't sell very well in shops, but nonetheless, I'm sure that he would give it a good push. That's if he can write very much, because I don't think there's a lot going on in his brain. Now, his hearing took place on September the 30th, and a written decision was drawn up on October the 30th, which denied him a change of plea, rightly so. On March the 16th, 2021, this is almost 2 years after Bianca's murder, he was sentenced to 25 years to life in prison. It always gets me a little bit when there's a lower number, 25 years to life, because I think that a man like this is so dangerous. They're the ultimate predators. You don't have to do very much to have your throat slit by them. Let's just be clear about that. If anybody meets him and he likes them, then they're going to be in danger. And I don't know whether you can change that kind of mindset. I think it's so entrenched and ingrained. I think it's part of their DNA. I think hostility just resides within every atom in their body. But it doesn't mean he's ever going to get out. I mean, you can spend the rest of your life in prison if they don't think you've changed enough. But God willing, when that first parole date comes up, he'll be denied. He was also charged with promoting prison contraband after corrections officers found a shiv. You know what a shiv is? It's basically a sharpened toothbrush that you can use as a knife. They found that in his cell, so he's not even behaving behind bars. He also allegedly wrote a letter to a friend. I'm using the word friend in a loose capacity here because anybody who associates with this not right really needs to question their life choices. And in this letter, he reportedly explained the motive that he couldn't handle the thought of her walking out of his life. I mean, genuinely, I couldn't bear the idea of you leaving me. So I killed you. And it's totally reasonable because then you left me, but I controlled the way you left me. But you still left me. So essentially, I literally created the issue of you leaving me by killing you. Oh, riddle me that. Honestly, it's just mental, isn't it? Look, yes, he didn't want anybody else to have her. It's got nothing to do with her walking out of her life. She was his friend. She was in a car. She'd just been to a concert with him. She would have been a good friend to him. Probably forever. Simple as. There was nothing about her that was leaving him or rejecting him. It's nothing to do with that. It's to do with him not being good enough as a human being to sustain a decent relationship where trust and connection and meaning exist. And he knows that he's eventually going to let go of her because she's going to see sense, because she's obviously a very forgiving, lovely person. And then she won't want anything to do with him because he's a dangerous, horrible predator. But no, what he means is, somebody else would have her because she's worth so much more than me, and I don't want that. He executes her to prevent her ever having happiness with somebody else. Now, the evidence that's against him is massive. It showed that the murder was premeditated, not that evidence should be required when you think about what he did. It should just be throw away the key, feed him mouldy bread and small amounts of water, ad infinitum for eternity. The investigators actually discovered that before he murdered Bianca, he'd gone on and researched lots of different ways to kill someone. He'd researched how to incapacitate someone. He actually looked up information about the carotid artery in the neck, so that's the one where you bleed out. He also researched choking, and he'd searched for Bianca online, taking loads of screenshots of the conversations. He'd actually placed that spray can, so he had spray paint in his car. He also had a suicide-related note from a Japanese comic. And as we know, he'd hidden his knife in the car. He also set up his camera on his phone. He recorded the murder. So all this highlights the premeditated nature of the murder. So all this exponentially evidences the premeditated nature of the murder. I'm very glad to say that Clark is locked up. He's serving his sentence in Utica prison in New York. Now, he has actually been interviewed from inside its walls by documentary maker Bianca Devins in 2023. Listen, I get it. We want to hear from the mouths of the murderers. Very often, though, the mouths of the murderers just tell us loads of lies, just loads of lies. But, we are intrigued to hear their sides of stories, their motivations, if only to understand their narcissism more greatly. But this is basically a documentary that happened. He emphasised his desire to court attention still, as far as I'm concerned, by actually doing that, because at the end of the day, he wants everybody to know that, it's not even that bad in prison. Do you know what I mean? That really upsets me. There he is, being interviewed. What do you want to hear in an interview from prison? Remorse, accountability, responsibility. Tell us that you're having nightmares every day of your life. Tell us that you're traumatized by your actions. Tell us that you deserve to be where you are. Don't say, it's not as bad as you think. It's not a bad life. Well, I don't know about you guys. I'm just throwing it in there. Maybe we could make it a little bit worse. I know the whole human rights brigade would come in and be like, I can't believe Emma Kenny's saying make prison worse. Yeah, make it worse, because if it's quite good, people aren't going to want to change, and if they do change, when they get out, if they fall back into their own ways, the chances are that they're not going to be afraid to go back. So it doesn't really sound like a great idea that he's having a good time. He also described his own previous life as chaotic and dysfunctional. Let's just blame everyone else. He said he spent time in foster homes. He said he was sexually abused there. Now, if that's the case, that would have been horrific, but usually you would expect a level of compassion and a grip on being kind but he didn't get that memo. His own father apparently ended up taking his mother hostage. As I said earlier on, his dad did end up in prison. Clark ended up in a group home. The system is imperfect. It must be very difficult. He described that as worse than prison. And I actually can understand where he would feel those sentiments, because I've worked with lots of children in care. Some people have a good experience. Some people have the absolute converse, and it's terrible. But he said for him, prison offers him some job security and he still has a voice. So that doesn't feel very fair, does it? With respect. Even after that interview, he actually wrote to the director and the filmmaker Bikini and claimed that Bianca had been sharing sexually explicit pictures and nudes with him, as well as claiming she'd experienced suicidal thoughts. So years on, basically what that means is that he's trying to victim blame and trying to mitigate his own heinous action. Well, she wanted to die. And also, you know, she was sending these pictures to me, which means that it's not surprising I got confused. I mean, just go away. Go away. Bianca's family, they refused to take part in the documentary. They didn't want to grant him more publicity. They said that there has been and continues to be enough. They certainly believe those people who share the images of their loved ones' murder have a huge amount to answer for. Tragically, in fact, images are still being shared today, guys. And of course, in that incel community, Brandon Clark is still being celebrated. In fact, relating to her murder, there are comments literally like this. I looked them up so you don't have to. Women are whores. She deserves being killed. Okay, sweetheart, we're over 50% of the population. Where are you going to have your babies from? Because I'm pretty sure a penis won't deliver one. Just throwing it out there. Also, things like this. Seeing her dead body gave me a raging boner. And that means that you are somebody likely to be a necrophile. You need to go and seek treatment immediately. No woman will ever be attracted to you. Also, if the only boner you can get is over a dead body, it speaks volumes about your level of being able to attract a living human being. Also, Mr. Clark, referring to the perpetrator, is a legend. He did the world a favour. I suppose he did to some degree. He's locked up probably for the rest of his life, and that certainly did the world a favour. Cruelly, someone even went so far as to send him a message on Facebook saying, "This is what I think of your dead whore of a daughter. She got what was coming to her." Yeah? Do you know the thing about life? I'm getting on now in years, you know. I'm getting on. Patience. The gift of patience is patience. It's a virtue. When I was younger, I didn't really connect with that. I've always been somebody who's quite a sensitive human being. Don't get me wrong. You can say what you like about me. Believe me, over the past 5 years, I've had a lot of shit said about me online. And I welcome and appreciate the fact that people have that right. So I'm not down on people being negative towards me. Your view is just as valid as mine. I may disagree with you. You may hate me. Again, that's okay, because you're a human being with an autonomous reaction, and I do not want to control anybody else in that way. But over time, there are certain limits where people are concerned. There are certain levels where people steep so low and so dark. And when I was younger, my reaction to that would have been immediate. I would have felt the need to defend me, my family, my friends, because I'm an incredibly loyal human being. And I feel like I understand justice and the right for justice. But these days, as I've grown older, and I'm sure a lot of you will relate to me, some of you younger people, not to patronise, you may not, and it's totally notable that that would be acceptable because you're young, and rightfully so, you have the fire within you. But as you get older, you realise that if you just take a step back, those people writing things like that to her mother, they may in that moment think that they've got the upper hand. But karma is amazing. I've watched people who've done the most heinous things to people, and I've waited. And I've watched as their life has fallen into pieces. Patience. I hope that the family understand that concept, patience. Whoever wrote that to the family, it's coming for you. You don't know when, you don't know how. You might not be looking over your shoulder, but it'll only be a few feet away. And one day, all that arrogance, all that superiority, all of those things that motivated you to do what you did, suddenly the vacuum will suck you up and you won't even know why. And maybe the family will never get to see it, but it'll happen. Patience. Bianca's family is amazing. Again, a family who are just incredible. They decided that they want to make a difference. So they have ensured that something positive has resulted from this travesty, from this tragedy, from this great loss of theirs. Bianca's murder exposed the incentive structure that literally exists across social media. So they've been really vocal, they've criticised it. They've said, listen, users can report, but they can also share appalling content and accumulate followers because of that. And they will not stop. So literally the day after Bianca's murder, her stepmother condemned those sharing images as disgusting. She also urged people to report offensive content. What does that say about that woman's strength? Because let me tell you, I went through a seriously traumatic loss. The next day, I was just like on the floor because my head was just cabbaged completely and I didn't know how I was going to breathe again. I love the fact that there are these warriors and they're just like dealing with their own agony, but they're like, no, I've got to get this message out there. You know, she's obviously very powerful. Then we've got Olivia Devins, her sister. She said that she'd been absolutely traumatized by the pictures sent to her because that was her sister. Can we just remember, because often, I know I say this, guys, and I know that you completely get it. I know that you understand where I am, and it's really powerfully important to me that as a community we connect on this level because we never forget what we're talking about, do we? It's so easy to say words and just pass them by and tell a story, but I just want to hold us here for a second. Her sister, Olivia, saw pictures of her loving sister having her head chopped off, basically. How do you contain that in your mind? She actually went ahead and deleted all the social media. She said, I have to live the rest of my life knowing I had to say goodbye to my sister in a funeral home. And I hope to God that they did an amazing job of making that beautiful girl look as beautiful as she was, because they are incredible at making sure that victims of horrible circumstances still appear beautiful in those moments at the family visit. My own second cousin had a horrendous injury when I was a younger girl. I was 20 at the time, and she came home in pieces, but they did an amazing job of making her beautiful. And I really hope that that's the case for this family. Now, in spite of all the horrors I've just described, I always want to think about hope that comes from it. And there is just something powerfully so good about the average human being. I know the people who come to this channel, you're good, you care. And I know that this is where we relate, because one of the things that's happened since Bianca's death and since all of those incels creating all of those grotesque memes, etc., to counteract those horrors, people know that these incels have produced all of this horrible material online relating to Bianca. And so tens of thousands of people, tens of thousands of us, have created pictures in the style of Bianca's selfies with pastel colours and flowers and hearts and clouds. And she's gorgeous. And she looks gorgeous, and that's how she should remain in our memories. Now, these mainly come from girls of a similar age. They've been absolutely determined to protect Bianca after her death. And isn't it amazing that these young girls, they're fighting back in this peaceful manner? You see, that's amazing to me. Peaceful manners, the way you resist, the way you fight peaceful, because we can all engage in that, can't we? And they're taking the horror and they're turning it into beauty. They're saying, no, she may have died that grotesque death. They may have died in those minutes in the most intensely unfair way, but that does not define this girl. What defines her is her beauty, her creativity, her being, the people who loved her. And they are warriors. They are peaceful warriors protecting Bianca after her death. Also, Bianca's mother's embraced #pink for Bianca, and she's basically just determined to make sure that no other family ever suffers what they have. So Bianca's family have actually gone ahead and worked with local politicians. They've made it illegal to post, share, or publish offensive photographs of victims of crime in New York. They go ahead and work with local politicians to help pass Bianca's law. So that's a federal bill that would hold social media companies accountable for allowing violent and graphic content on their platforms. The family have also, I mean, they're incredible, aren't they? The fact that I'm still going on about what they've done. They've established a scholarship in Bianca's name, and it's intended to help students following Bianca's ambitions of helping adolescents with mental health struggles like those she had personally experienced. So Bianca may be dead in this paradigm, on this planet, in this universe, although I believe she will be thriving elsewhere, but her legacy exists, her name exists. She will carry on, and she will carry on doing good. the good she always intended to in this world. When Bianca was in her darkest days, when she struggled to deal with her mental health, one of the things her mother said, she made her daughter a promise. If she fought to live, she'd always be by her side. Isn't that devastating? So there were times where obviously Bianca didn't want to be here, and her mother just said, if you just live, I'll always be with you. She said, as part of honouring Bianca's memory, I will always keep that fight alive. Under this new law, it's a crime to post graphic images online of people in traumatic situations, and it should be. And Bianca's mother stated, we are very grateful that Governor Hochul has signed Bianca's law, which is so powerful, isn't it? Because it changes other people's lives. She also went on to say, immediately after the death of our beloved Bianca, our family began receiving graphic postings of her death, photos taken by her murderer. She said these were continually sent over many weeks, months and years by heartless people who just simply could not imagine the pain that our family was going through. She said, sadly, cruel people are still sending those photographs over social media 3 years later. She went on to say this law will now hold people accountable if they harass and humiliate victims of violent crime. And New York Governor Kathy Hochul signed Bianca's law into effect in December 2022. So without a doubt, Bianca's family have created legacy for her, but also are protecting others because of what happened to her. And that's an amazing legacy for Bianca to hold. Brandon Clark will be eligible for parole in 2044, which is horrific. Hopefully he won't get that. Bianca's family are absolutely determined that if he will never be let out of prison, amen to that. They have asserted that they will go before the parole boards in all future parole board meetings to aid this, to keep him inside. Now, Brandon Clark apparently stated, how do you meaningfully apologise for doing something so horrible, so irreversible? He asked, that's the worst part. You can't take it back. No shit, Sherlock. No shit. Those words have got to be the most hollow words for a family who witnessed their daughter be brutally killed by a monster who not only recorded the killing, but also then shared the pictures of the murder online before they even knew that their sister and daughter had died. At the end of the day, no one can have a shred of empathy for this man. If you own what you do, if you're genuinely remorseful for your actions, you don't act like Clark. Yes, he might be eloquent and he might be articulate when he's faced with an interviewer, but he's also a man capable of meticulously planning and murdering a defenceless girl in cold blood, whilst dramatising it online to gain notoriety. It's unbelievable, isn't it? The internet has got this power to connect, to educate, to support. But it also, to some degree, it just provides this shield for those who want to cause harm. In cases like Bianca's, where the suffering of the victim's family is exploited for clicks, for shares, for just sheer cruelty, God, we've got to ask ourselves, guys, how do we change this? How do we hold people accountable? Because no grieving family should ever have to endure this kind of abuse. The things that I've described in this video, no one should. Bianca's story is absolutely tragic by itself, without the additional torment that the family have had to endure, that the family have to fight every single day. At least because of their legacy, Bianca's going to be remembered not for how she died, but for the vibrant, creative and loving person she was in life. I'm going to put a picture up of that vibrant, loving person. Let's remember her name for all the right reasons. Take care, guys. Sending you a ton of love. I'll see you next time.